The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Hey, Mike, I know we were talking about what our daughters wanted to do. Did I tell you what my daughter's looking to study? It's forensic pathology now. Ooh. And I'm like, this is hardcore. Anyway, that's it for another show, but welcome everyone to the Bliss Business Podcast. I'm Steven Sakash here with my co-host, Mike Lusky. Today's conversation tackles an ongoing challenge in business: how to balance profit with social responsibility. Can companies truly thrive while making a positive impact? Or does doing good mean sacrificing financial success? Mike, introduce our guest today.
Oh, man. Thank you, Steven. I'm super fired to do that. So our guest today is none other than Bea Boccalandro. She's known fondly to others as Bea. She's a leading expert in the purpose-driven business area. She's an author as well as an advisor to Fortune 500 companies on how to integrate social good into their core business strategies, which we know our audience has a great deal of interest in. So Bea as well has worked with brands like IBM, Disney, and Toyota to embed purpose into their daily work, making social impact a natural part of business operations rather than something that's sort of like a side initiative. Her book, Do Good at Work, has inspired countless leaders to rethink how they approach purpose in their business. And so Bea, welcome to our show. We are so happy to have you here with us today.
I'm happier. Anyway, yeah, I love the work you're doing, and I love this podcast. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for being here with us today. We're going to talk about a lot of good things today, I'm sure. But maybe to get us started, why do you believe that social responsibility, isn't just like an ethical choice, but really like a smart business strategy?
Well, 2 words. It's time. It's just time. So
Here.
Imagine that you started a construction company, wherever you are, in San Clemente, California, and you were like, you know what? We're going to go back to the way things were done in the 1930s. So no hard hats, no worker protection for falls. If a worker slips off a beam, they're just going to splatter 15 floors down, right? Mm-hmm. How profitable would this business be?
Yeah.
Right? Good luck finding investors, right? Good luck finding customers, employees. It's not going to work. But you know what? In the 1930s, that was profitable. And the freaks were the managers like Joseph Strauss, who was the chief engineer for the Golden Gate Bridge, who said, we're going to give workers hard hats. We're going to string a net across the entire construction site so that workers don't die. And what they heard was like, oh, that's like communist. That's not the role of business. What are you thinking? What are you doing? The role of business is not that. So sometime between then and now, the role of business, the responsibility of business has extended beyond that, so that it includes giving workers a hard hat, and it includes safety nets, and it includes, for example, putting labels on whatever food you're trying to sell so that we know what's in it, and wheelchair ramps, right? So the role of the company, of the modern corporation, the modern incorporated entity, ever since it was established, the first private one was like in 1813 in Boston. The moment it existed, the role has been expanding and expanding and expanding. So it has now expanded to the point where part of the role of a business includes all those staples of corporate social responsibility. It includes mitigating your carbon footprint. It includes making sure that you're not aggravating systemic inequities. So it's just time, because even though, it was an expense in the 1930s to give workers hard hats. It's still an expense, but now it is an expense that you can't afford to forego. And corporate social, like the main parts of corporate social responsibility are now there as well. You cannot, and large companies know this, like you can't find, there's over 90% of the S&P 500, they have CSR or ESG reports. They know that they need to do this. So I think the short answer is it's this point in history.
Yeah. And I think it's actually good that we're doing this now, considering, the involvement of machines and automation and, even creating an autonomous vehicle, right? Can you imagine if you weren't socially responsible, but you were going to create an autonomous vehicle? So I totally agree with you. I'm glad that it's happening now and, not 10 years from now.
And I feel like we know where consciousness is, and we know where it's going. And companies, I think, sometimes are, being dragged kicking and screaming along the way. And, I think many still view social responsibility as kind of a nice to have, like a check off the box kind of thing. But rather than like a core business strategy, what's the biggest misconception about purpose-driven business, do you think?
Yeah, great question. Because I think that, so my favorite part of helping companies with their corporate social responsibility, with their corporate purpose, is where the humans are involved. So really, if it's going to be part of the, everyday business, it's because your people are moving it forward. And so here's where I think the biggest misconception is. I think leaders, at least of large companies, I'm working more and more with SMEs, and I think they're probably like 10 or 15 years behind on this. But the large companies I work with, the Fortune 500s, they're fully aware that they need purpose, right? So, and really, the value of purpose is when it hits the human. There's no value in the plaque saying this is our purpose, no matter how beautiful it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what they think is like, okay, there's two paths to purpose. These are the two main paths to purpose that leaders think about. The first one is the Simon Sinek, which is answer why your company exists and then align everything there. And of course, it's some beautiful, compelling thing. So that's purpose, right? Purpose has to be a social impact. Otherwise, if your purpose is like, we're going to be number one in this industry, good luck. That's not going to feel like purpose to anybody, right? I love Simon Sinek for doing this. I just think most companies are not ready for that, because if you craft the purpose that is going to work as purpose, so when it hits your employees and your customers, they're like, yeah, I can get behind that, you are probably not going to be able to live up to it, at least not if you're a publicly traded company. Are you willing to pull a product off the shelves when selling it undermines your purpose? Like CVS did. It happens every now and then, like CVS did when they pulled cigarettes off, right? Most companies, when I ask them this, and when they, hire me to help with purpose, they're like, whoa, I don't think we could get away with that. I'll lose my job. I'm supposed to like maximize profit for my shareholders. So I love Simon Sinek, compelling why, line everything up. I think most businesses can't go there, at least not authentically. So then the second option that people, approach me for, leaders, it's like, hey, okay, well, can you help me help individual employees with their personal purpose? And I'm like, I absolutely can. I know like great coaches, and I I have a partner firm that has a wonderful peer-to-peer program that will help them with their purpose. But do you realize that now they're going to bring this into the workplace and they're going to be like, why aren't we doing anything about the sex trafficking? We're a hospitality firm. Are you willing to bring that in? Because if not, like, don't bother hiring me. Like, what's the point? And also, this actually happened with a firm. It happened before I knew it was a problem. This was about 12 years ago, to go this second route. And that was that. So we help people with their purpose. This is a very B2B business, and it helps other businesses simply be more profitable. It's very, very, flat in terms of social impact. Well, the resignations like skyrocketed because people were like, I just realized that what I really want to do is help autistic parents, and I'm doing accounting to help a bunch of partners like get richer. And so anyway, we had to deal with all these resignations. So that's the other question. Are you ready to have your people quit because they realize that they can't bring their purpose into the workplace, which is very hard to do? Like what does the autistic
I think what you hope there is maybe you're taking a step backwards or two, but now that you're articulating your purpose, now you're going to attract people, hopefully, that are really aligned with your purpose. You think? I mean, it's obviously no one wants to go through that as a company, but I could see coming out the other side of that once you've articulated that purpose.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. There are companies there are workplaces that do this, that can do this correctly. So, Dr. Bronner's. Everybody talks about Patagonia. I mean, frankly, Eventbrite is a client. I think they do it fairly well. So don't get me wrong, but I think most organizations, neither one of these routes is a good one, like doing the corporate purpose or helping people with their personal purpose. So I think the biggest misconception is that they don't realize there's a third path. And the third path is the low-hanging fruit, which is gives you all the benefits at the employee level and can even work at the customer level. So one of my clients is Caesars Entertainment. I was at Caesars Palace for a board committee meeting, and I was headed out of the hotel room, and the housekeeper was right there. So because I'm familiar with Caesars Entertainment CSR, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity to collect data on their soap collection and recycling with Clean the World. That then they give the soap to families, right, so that they can wash their hands. Okay, so I asked her. I talked to her a little bit, and she's not really into talking to me. But then I asked her, hey, I heard that you have this program involving soap, and her eyes light up, and she's like, yes, we fill up this bag. Now, it's like 7:15 in the morning and there's nothing in the bag, right? She's like, well, by the end of the day, this will be full. And then it goes to this place and they oddly wash the soap. And then they package it like it's almost like a birthday present. And then they give it to families in the US that don't have soap. And so they get sick. And I was in a hurry. So I'm like, she's telling me that she started looking for photographs of the plant in her phone. And I was like, well, I got to go to this meeting. So I actually just gave her my card and I'm like, send me the photographs. And then I go to the elevator well, and I hear her footsteps like running after me. And she goes, Miss, I misspoke. It doesn't just go to families in the US, it goes to families all over the world. And I'm thinking, okay, she was so into this program that she went the extra mile or the extra 20 feet to run to correct like something that she said that belittled the program. So guess what that is? That's purpose. And we feel purpose anytime we make a meaningful contribution to others or to a societal cause. So and by the way, I've seen the data myself. I helped analyze it at Caesars. employees who participate in her programs have higher engagement and higher retention. So yes, there is a path to purpose that you don't have to start with the making the corporate purpose work for everybody, and nor do you have to start with helping people with their biggest existential question, which is like, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not even sure most employers are the right organization to help people with such a big question. I mean, you're not even giving them a living wage, and you're going to tell them, you know what, we're going to help you with your biggest existential question. So the third path, I think, which is job purposing, which is basically help create an environment, help employees, help middle managers, help HR find ways to do what Luce did, which is like, as part of her work week, she makes meaningful contributions to others or to a societal cause. And you will reap the benefits of purpose living within your employees. Like, that's what people don't realize, is that this is just as positive. It's the oxytocin, it's the serotonin, it's the dopamine, you know, that's all been shown. So I think the biggest misconception is that leaders don't realize that there's a path that may make more sense for them.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. You know, and I think in that particular instance, you know, she was able to be part of something a lot bigger, right, than just herself, right? And so I think that was key. You know, talking about leaders and even some of the statistics that you speak of, Bea, you know, some of those leaders worry that, you know, going down this path of focusing on some sort of social impact, you know, might actually slow down business growth, right? But in prep for the show, one of the things that I noticed, and you know, here's a couple more statistics maybe for you, was that the businesses that were purpose driven or aligned with some kind of purpose were growing faster than their competitors by 3x. And then on top of that, it said that when this social good is implemented into the business strategy, that they're even seeing higher customer loyalty, you know, by a third. So, you know, certainly it does have like a good business impact. So I'm actually curious, you know, of maybe seeing, are there more examples? Because I think for our audience, when they hear like the example of Caesars or maybe, you know, how others are doing, you know, what are some other examples of companies that have shown maybe purpose in this third way?
Yeah, so HP is a client, and they have a program called Eco Advocates. Okay. And so what they did was they said, hey, if you're an HP salesperson and you're going to go sell to another business, you know, it's B2B is what they're doing, then why don't you help them also become more sustainable? So lower their carbon footprint, lower their solid waste, help them recycle. And so the business, you know, the sales proposition is now, hey, we will sell you the best cloud, and it's the quickest and the fastest. And also, by the way, we can help you with all these things. And so we know from, again, as you can tell, I'm a nerd. I spend a lot of time measuring these things at my client's company.
I love it.
We love it.
Yeah.
Metrics are good.
Oh, good. Yeah. So we know that the Eco Advocates increased engagement. And in fact, it worked so well for HP. It started in Canada with a woman named Frances Edmonds and Caroline Barlerin, who was in the US doing this. But anyway, it worked so well that they extended it beyond the sales, and then they extended it globally. So, and you know what? They renamed it. So it's no longer called Eco Advocates. It's called Sustainability Sells, which kind of proves your point.
Yeah.
You know what? This is working as a sales strategy as well. And, you know, the evidence is fairly overwhelming now. I have like 153 footnotes in my book. If someone contacts me, I'll send you chapters 3 and 10 that have all the evidence. Also on my website, I have a PDF with like, it's the summary of the slides that I present over and over to leadership. And, you know, I don't know, only 30% of the time they believe it. But The evidence is pretty overwhelming. The study that you talked about, it's probably the one that was in Harvard Business Review a few years ago on the cover. Is that the one?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So those researchers, they weren't looking for purpose. They felt lucky that they found it, because they were like, okay, what leads to growth? What are the drivers of growth? And they were like, no, this can't be, this can't be, this can't be. So, and that, since that study has been published, now they're, I think most academics that look at this are aware of it. I mean, there's very good studies done now, like just with sales on how socially responsible a company is and how much it sells. So if you're one standard deviation more socially responsible than the mean, then your sales are going to go up like 8%. And this is just numbers. Like this was no one's opinion. They just ran the numbers and it came out like this.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you've got to have the numbers, because, like I said, if we're going to keep moving people forward where their sole purpose is, dealing with shareholder value and things like that, I sometimes just speaking the numbers will be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can get around that. And then, you sneak in the side door with love and compassion somehow, I guess, in that process. We're going to bring on Martha here. She's got a question. Martha, go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, Bea. So how do you guide companies in integrating purpose into their brand messaging and customer engagement strategies?
Oh, I love that. So a few years ago, Cohn and Porter Novelli did a study on, they were comparing different types of ads. So one ad is your standard, this will make you, sexier, richer, cleaner. I don't know, the standard stuff that's sold to us. And then the other ad was like basically, cause marketing. It had a social impact. But what they did was they hooked people up to these sensors so they could tell biometrically what was going on with them with both ads. And the second ad generated a biometric response. So this is like pulse, temperature, those, I don't know, like nerve stuff that was the same as, and these are the words of the researchers, okay? Gazing into the eyes of a loved one. So this is subconscious. Like if you ask people sometimes, yeah, we'll pay more, we won't pay more or whatever. But like, why would you give that up? Like, why wouldn't you have your advertising, your marketing, put something forward that, goes straight through the cognitive part of the brain, all the way, to our subconscious, probably to our amygdala, to create a connection with that person. So I don't know any wrong ways of doing it, except if you're, greenwashing, if it's not authentic. That's the one thing I would say. Yeah. I would run it by your employees as a focus group before you put it out there, because they'll know whether it's authentic or not.
Yeah, that for sure.
If it passes the employee test, then you're good. It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think there was like this great example going back to, the start of the Black Lives Matter movement. Pepsi came out with this commercial where essentially they were trying to, and I don't know if maybe you recall it, but Pepsi was supposedly the solution between the demonstrators and the police force, right? And so there's in this commercial, this girl hands over, who isn't, who's a Caucasian girl for one, right? Probably, not as involved in the full emotions of the movement. And here she gives this to a police officer, and it's a Pepsi, and then the world's like a better place because of it. I just felt, they got a lot of criticism, obviously for that ad, because to your point, right, it's just disingenuous. There's no way that something so large is going to be solved by, a Pepsi. I'm sorry, it's just not. But I think the key word that you mentioned there, Bea, for me was the word connection, right? I mean, there's a lot of connection that takes place with a loved one. And if you can build connection, that really seems like the key point, right? Is how do you build true, genuine connection.
We talk about this a lot. I mean, that's just kind of really how we try and market, is to, get that emotional connection in some way and make sure it's authentic, because otherwise, like Mike said, there's an example of it just really falling flat, like a soda that's been left out for several days. But
so how do you do that? I mean, you guys are the experts at this. Like, what I'm turning the question around.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I want to leave with my, how do you do that?
I think like what we call it is really just, it's kind of empathetic marketing. And it's really focusing on how does something make you feel, this process of it. It's a whole nother show, trust me.
But let me build on that a little bit, because we haven't talked, we talked about the business benefits, but there are all these health and happiness benefits to the job purposing. So Luce, so there's, again, chapter 3 of my book, and again, I will send people the PDFs of those if you don't want the whole book. But so Luce, she will sleep better that night. She's less likely to suffer from insomnia. She will be happier, not hours, not minutes, but days later. And so, and also she'll be healthier. Like, literally, if this is part of her work life on a monthly basis, it doesn't even appear to have to be weekly basis. And for her, it's probably daily. She will actually have about a 24% lower risk of having a cardiac event in the next year. So I think your point about empathic marketing is so powerful, because when you awaken that in people, when you touch that pro-social part of them, it's like we turn into a different person. We're happier, we're healthier, and then of course we are going to be more attached to the product that's right in front of us, or the brand that's right in front of us.
And I think for us, it's such a huge responsibility, because we're dealing with millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of impressions that are going out there. And the impact you can have on that, if you're being a little more empathetic in that process, it's hard to even measure that, I would think. But it's just a ripple effect out there, because you're putting so much good out there, and we're responsible for millions and millions and millions and millions of these impressions. And only a small percentage really is taking this empathetic approach to things. Martha,
Steve, real quick, let me just ask real quick. I was just going to kind of maybe answer. Can I answer Bea's question a little bit more, and then you can move on?
Yeah. Then Martha's question again.
So Bea, I was going to just mention, going back to your question, there's a specific tool. It's called an empathy map that we use in our work, and it asks some key questions. But the point is, it first starts with, who is it that you're trying to connect with? Okay, and I'll just give you one example, right? So let's just say I want to connect with fathers, right? So the empathy map says, what are they seeing? What are they thinking in their head? What are they hearing? What are they saying? And what do they want to do, like, in their heart?
I love that.
So you use that empathy map. Now, if I was a father, like, a great example of this is the original MasterCard Priceless commercial was about a dad and his son going to a baseball game. And a dad, wants nothing more. Here, I'm going to get all emotional. Wants nothing
as
more,
long as it's a Red Sox game, I'm good with your story.
But that was the key, right? It's like the tickets are expensive, the drinks are expensive, the popcorn's expensive, but the experience at the end of the day is absolutely priceless, right? And it was that connection. And I think that was the magic of all of those campaigns. Another one, the Always brand campaign with the Like a Girl campaign. Who did we want to target? What was, there was this bullying that was going on, and this stereotyping that was going on with women and girls. And Always just said, we're just going to turn this thing on its head, and we're going to make people feel confident and strong from this campaign. So I think using the empathy map is very important for us, and then also thinking, who is it that we're trying to connect with? Sorry, Steve. I know that's probably
no, it's all right. And these are complicated processes, which is why we've developed like the AI CMO software, AICMO.io. is to help like small businesses kind of, they don't have to, get into all the weeds of this, but take them through that process really easily. But again, it's this responsibility, I feel like, that we can put a lot of good out there into the world if we kind of learn how to do that. And to your points all along, it can be very, very profitable if you're worried about it. There's all the kinds of data behind that. Martha, let's go to you. I know you've got another question here.
Yes, but before the question, we just want to thank our audience for posting the comments. We're looking at them at LinkedIn and YouTube and X. So thanks everyone for that. So Bea, the last question from me, how do you help businesses communicate their purpose effectively? And how do you deal with overcoming resistance to balance doing good versus profit when it occurs?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of communicating the purpose, frankly, I feel bad saying this to a firm like yours, but like, that's my last concern, because if you're living it, if your employees are activating it.
Oh, this is a good point, though. It's like we can tell the story, but we really need you to live this purpose. Yeah. By the way, Martha, thank you for the question. If you want to hop off, go for it.
Okay.
Continue on, Bea. I was just, I'm saying there's two sides to this, and we know it just so closely.
I can tell you do. Yeah. I could tell you. Yeah. I mean, there's a contingency, right? So it better be happening. And so then the thing is, okay, so if it's happening, think of Luz. Okay. She was so committed to telling me the story that she ran after me to make sure it was correct. So now you put a mic in front of her and it's over. Like, and it's coming from the source. So, I work with Fortune 500s, it's like FedEx and Toyota and Caesars Entertainment, et cetera. They are going to communicate it. And, I do work with their communication departments, but what I, really like, all I try to do is just like listen to your own people. And if you're not hearing anything and you're having to come up with original content, then there's a problem. It's not happening. So maybe you shouldn't talk about it.
Exactly. No, it's like, I always just say, we can help you talk the talk, but if you aren't walking the walk, it's just going to be, it could totally backfire on you.
Yeah. Love that question, Martha. Yeah.
Yep.
So Bea, we talked a lot about purpose, right, today here on the show, and in different forms and fashions. And so one thing that I'm starting to do with our guests is to ask them just a very clear question about purpose. And so maybe in a succinct way, if you can give us some kind of a sound bite, for the listeners when they leave and that all this discussion around purpose pops into their mind. What would you say in business is the importance of purpose?
I would say if your job doesn't improve the world, improve your job. And that is the path to purpose. And if the job of your people that report to you doesn't improve their job, improve their jobs.
That's beautiful, right? Yeah. Oh, because obviously then they're doing the wrong thing, right? They're involved in.
Right. Well, what's interesting, and this is not a good finding, by the way, it's not one that I'm proud of, but it appears that it's not so much that they're doing the wrong thing. It's just that they're not doing enough of the right thing. Right. So in other words, you can have a job that is 90% like just helping a bunch of shareholders get richer, 10% pro-social. Like literally it's like half, 6 minutes a day, half an hour a week, 2 hours a month is all it takes. And you know what? All those things that I talked about, lose healthier, happier, they're going to be triggered. So, and then once you start folding that in, then people start questioning like, maybe we shouldn't be doing it this way too. So yeah, so it's both, but I think in terms of the driver for impact, it's more how much good you do.
Yeah. It creates a lot of momentum that way.
what am I doing during those 6 minutes a day?
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
there's loose. That's one example. But so it's great to hear from readers. So one of the favorite characters. So there's over 100 examples in Do Good at Work. So one of my favorites is Leroy. So he's a parking attendant. Now, when you look at meaningful work, so this is I forget who did the research. But anyway, meaningful work, parking attendant is the least meaningful job out there. So really only like about 51 out of 7 people find the work meaningful at all, right? At the very top is healthcare, educators, and
very easy to see meaning on those, but for
yeah,
that parking attendant.
on the meaning scale. So this is parking attendant is very tough. Like, what do you do, right? So, and I met Leroy because I parked my car there when I taught at Georgetown University. So I parked there a lot, right? So, but I had nothing to do with helping him with this. This was all, I only witnessed it. So he realized he hated his job, by the way, originally. And he said all he did was wait for the afternoon to like play on his car, the afternoon lull, nobody's parking or leaving, and to game on his phone. And then I'll keep the story short, but basically he noticed that a lot of the tires were bald. He had an uncle who had an accident in the rain, and he was like, this is really dangerous. So he's like, hey, I can measure the tire tread, let owners of these cars know, you know what, your car is not completely safe here. You need to replace these tires. If that was the case, or let them know that they were good, either way. And, he got the hugs from the single mother who was like, I had no idea I was driving my 3-year-old in a dangerous vehicle. Yeah. So there's your 6 minutes, right?
I like it. I mean, this ties in, like we talk about, build love into scalable systems. If you're looking for areas where you can insert some sort of love into something, I don't know what you're doing. You could be a parking attendant. You could be, a housekeeper. You could be, there's a gazillion different jobs out there, we all know, but you can find ways to make an impact, a loving impact in some way. And this is just a perfect example of, you could sit there and be in that parking attendant all day long, but if you're not prompted, what could I do that would be a little bit more loving in this job?
I love it. That's a great inquiry question. Like, just be more loving. And if that just means like being kinder to people who, are late at a meeting, believe it or not, there is evidence that even just that will have a positive impact on them and on you. And, it can just be recognizing like someone every morning for something that they did. It can be like deciding like, hey, I'm buying supplies. Maybe I should buy supplies from a local minority business, So one of the beauties of job purposing is that it's fairly binary. So really there's very little difference on the impact between like saying nice words to someone, something very small, and, eliminating all carbon from your supply chain. Like, as humans, like, they both just register as like, ding, 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 you're being pro-social, and there's, and this is a good thing for you in the long run. That's probably what's happening here, because we're social animals. And so, yeah, you're going to get energy, and you're going to get happiness, and you're going to get all these things, and they both work equally well. So just a little more loving will do it.
Yeah, it's the ingredient, right? That we need there. So, Bea, we're getting close to the end of the show here. I had a couple more questions for you, but maybe we can combine these, because I think leaders sometimes worry about going down that performative or greenwashing path, right? That we talked about a little bit earlier. And then there has to be some kind of outlook. So maybe, in your advice, how can leaders, I would say, over the next 5 to 10 years, if they want to continue to have social impact, what can they do, so that it's not performative?
Yeah, I mean, when we start with clients, we usually start with what we call the purpose pulse. And it's basically figuring out where is the positive social impact happening at your enterprise. And so, and then can that be scaled? Or can we learn from that to like what resonates? And so I would say, the Purpose Pulse is a little formal, and, there's some cool stuff like, focus groups where AI helps. So the follow-up questions come up and they're anonymous and all these things. But anybody, any enterprise can basically do their own version of a Purpose Pulse. And it's just like, listen to where the purpose is happening and just learn from that. And it will become, I think, really, if you listen well, it will point in certain paths pretty quickly, like what makes sense. The one thing I would tell leaders is sometimes they discard things because they're like, well, that has nothing to do with the business. And don't discard it because of that. Like something. So, I worked with a regional grocery chain on the East Coast. And I was hired to like, let's figure out our corporate, the Simon Sinek, the corporate purpose and align and all of that. And they had a teammate whose house burnt down like two or 3 years before I showed up. And so the employees rallied around that. And then they realized, wow, we really like doing that. And so then they got first responder training. And then they were helping with other disasters. And I was like, you already have your purpose. Just support them in this. And they were like, but it has nothing to do with food. Shouldn't it be food security? I'm like don't look a gift horse in the mouth. No. Like it is ignited. They're so excited. Like just pay for the training, for God's sake, So sometimes... and you know what? The leaders were only vaguely aware of what was happening. And this was not a big firm. I mean, so I would say, listen, and you just listen. Yeah. Because employees, you have the Leroys pushing this forward everywhere.
Yep. That's for sure. Before we wrap up, we ask every guest this same final question. Do you think love belongs in business?
So, so as you know, I wrote a book. I talked about it for like years without doing anything. And then it took me forever to write it as well. And in that period where I was sending it to people, someone who I consider a mentor asked me, B, why are you writing this book? And I said something incomprehensible, like a new horizon, positive culture. I don't know what I said. And he was like, Storge. And I'm like, excuse me? Storge. No idea what this was. Okay, well, it's spelled, it's Greek. It's Storge. Oh, by the way, he had read the manuscript, so he kind of knew what the book was about. So, we know that the Greeks talked about eros, and we know that they talked about agape, and philos, those three types of love. We always hear that, but there are others, and storge is one of them. And of course, I had no idea what he was talking about. So I looked it up, and it is a form of love, but it is, and the Stoics talk about it. C.S. Lewis talks about it, but C.S. Lewis describes it as the kind of love that it just kind of creeps up on you. It's organic. It doesn't hit you over the head. So I was like, oh my God, he's right. That's why I wrote that book, because I want all companies, all enterprises, anywhere where people show up to work, to just be imbued with storge. So, and it's a form of love. So absolutely.
Natural affection, like that type you could describe between a mother and a child.
Yeah. Although, again, like C.S. Lewis and the Greeks and all of them, they were like, yeah, okay, the familiar one is easy. That one comes naturally, but where humanity needs to go, and the Stoics especially said this, where the humanity needs to go is that in all gatherings, this exists. So, so yes, onwards with love. So And I look
Yes.
forward to hearing what else your podcast does along those lines and your work.
Thank you very much. It's been a great conversation. Where can our listeners go to learn more about your work and connect with you?
I try to be active on LinkedIn, and my website is dogoodatwork.com. That's the quickest way to get there. And there's lots of resources, and people can join my mailing list.
All right, go to dogoodatwork.com and buy that book. Buy that book, please. So to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. If this discussion inspired you, be sure to subscribe and share this episode. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and impact.